Warning: the following contains explicit language and subject matter that may not be suitable for younger listeners, church folk, and people who enjoy kale smoothies.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Pod Amongst Men. I'm your host, Steve B., and these are Coffee Break Conversations for the 21st century. We're back. This is episode 109. My guest today is Matthew Marcellus. He's a guitar player from the band EMAROSA. Perhaps you've heard of them. Their latest album, Peach Club, was a banger. If you're not aware, there was also some controversy regarding the lead singer of the band and something that happened years ago in the past, unrelated to any of the current members of the band. But Matt came on today, and he shared his story, coming up, playing in different bands, how he joined this band, and what eventually happened, and some of the tolls that being a touring professional musician can take on a man's mind, man or woman or whatever else, just in this case, a man. He's a young man. I don't know where I'm going with that, but either way, Matt told his story, and he was very, very open and honest with us, and I really appreciated him coming on, and I hope you guys appreciate this episode too. So I'm not going to ramble anymore. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Matthew Marcellus. Do you want me to refer to you as Matt or Matthew? I just want to make sure I'm clear, so it's the way you
dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. All right. Then I'll bounce around a little bit, a little variety, spice of life.
Yeah. My middle name's Michael, so if you want to toss that in there.
Oh, wow. We'll do it like Cuban style. I'll just call you Matthew Michael, but say it real fast and not use all the letters. Matthew Michael. Jose Antonio. So, all right, Matt, for the listeners now, do you want to give a little bit of a brief history of, who you are and where you came from, kind of like your young life, how you came up as a kid?
Sure. My name is Matthew Marcellus. I grew up in the suburbs of kind of in between Reading and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm an only child. I grew up with two parents who went to church every Sunday. I got drugged to church every Sunday. And then in junior high, I got a really shitty acoustic guitar at a yard sale and started fumbling around on it. And
do you remember the brand, like the make?
Oh, dude, it didn't have a brand. It had holes in it and it was covered in like skate stickers. And I got it for like $5. It was
wow.
It was total junk.
I
ended up in my first band at one of the high school bonfires that we performed at. I smashed it.
That's pretty nice. You kind of burned it in effigy almost.
Yeah.
I got my first acoustic from an ex-girlfriend's uncle. She had like this kind of hippie-ish, like stonery uncle. He's a little stony, very nice guy, but he gave me this like old classical guitar, so it still had the nylon strings and everything.
Nice.
And that was how I learned to play guitar on that fucking thing.
Nice.
That's long gone though. I didn't smash it, so I don't have that part of the story down. All right, so you said between Reading and Philadelphia. I lived in Lansdale and Hatfield for a time.
Oh, okay.
So
I grew up in like Wyomissing area.
Okay.
Right now I live in Spring City, Phoenixville, which is much closer to where you grew up.
Yeah, I know that a little bit. I like passed through, but I was born in Philly, so I always have Philly's always very near and dear to my heart. And my grandparents, my mom, they're from Norristown, so
I have
a lot of history like southeast Pennsylvania.
I just moved our roommate to Norristown yesterday. He just moved down there.
It's is it still? I haven't been there in I guess a couple years, but it always looked like old, like it was just on the brink of like coming back up. And
yeah, there's definitely still some not great parts, but it's coming around. Like he's in this really nice warehouse building that was just redone. So it's getting some life shot back into it.
There's in Jersey, we have a Morristown, which is like a small city So people always say, wait, Morristown, Pennsylvania? No. Norristown. M-N,
Yeah.
Confusion there. All right, so you got your first guitar for $5 at a yard sale. When did you, how old were you at the time, you said?
That was seventh grade. I started noodling around because there was a guitar club in the morning before classes. And so I had a neighbor down the street, and his dad was the manager of a radio station locally, and his son played bass. And I started kind of, messing around with him, jamming around. And then I met this kid in junior high named Brent, who was a drummer. And him and I would start jamming around before classes in the band room because they had a little room set up with the drum kit, and they had like an amp and a bass rig and stuff. So we eventually came together and formed my first band around eighth grade talent show. I think it was the first time we performed together.
I've heard that story before. I know a lot of guys did it the same way. My best friend Drew, he was a guitar player, and that his first performance was at a talent show.
We did a medley of parts of Stairway to Heaven, Nirvana, and Blink-182, and I will never forget. We started with the super easy picking intro of Stairway to Heaven or whatever, and there was this older guy in the front row, and he just starts bawling. And I'm in eighth grade trying to play this song. Yeah. And I guess his wife had just passed or something. It was their song when they grew up, and there was some, big memory, but it was just my first time ever performing. And I'm just freaking out, and this guy's just crying in front of me.
He brought a man to tears.
But yeah. But yeah, that was my first band into high school. And then when I hit 11th grade, 10th grade, my uncle took me to my first real concert. He took me to see Foo Fighters and Chili Peppers in Scranton.
Nice. Very nice.
And that definitely made a big impact on me, just the energy and whatnot. I mean, both those bands are the Chili Peppers are in their 60s, and they now play harder. Same. That band plays harder than most 16-year-old bands around right now.
That's always been impressive to me. You see older guys who've been doing it a long time who still put on a better show than young dudes. I saw Fleetwood Mac in Atlantic City. Fucking Lindsey Buckingham put on such a good show. The guy's old. He's an old man, and he's running back and forth across the stage, and he plays shit that's so much more complicated than the average guitarist. That guy doesn't miss a beat. A beat. And that's a pro right there. Not many people can do that. But it's inspiring to really see, greatness up on stage.
And that was really what captivated me with music was the live energy about shows. I was never the type of person who wanted to, be a Steve Vai or a Tosin Abasi. I never wanted to be a shred dude. I just wanted to, write songs that I liked and travel and play with my friends. That was my mentality from the beginning. I never cared about partying or any of that. I never even drank till I was 27. So that was it was always just I wanted to just travel and play music with my friends. And that was high school was when I started just going to local shows, and that was when I really got into the scene and just started. I mean, I lived at shows in high school, and
I feel a lot of people who weren't within those scenes, they don't really understand how it worked. They, especially I kind of came up in a screamo, little more hardcore circle, and when people show up to shows that aren't from that, don't understand it, they think, oh my God, these people are all on drugs. They're out there punching each other and doing karate kicks like nut jobs. No, it's not it. Most of those kids are straight edge. Where in Jersey, there's a lot of kids from Flemington area. It's all farm kind of fields. And there was a lot of Christian kids who they don't do anything. They don't touch drugs, alcohol, nothing. That's just how they, in the words of Jack Black in Nacho Libre, they're just releasing their wiggles, that's how they're letting their emotions out. I mean, it's different than what, I guess normal society, polite society would be doing, but it's just a different scene. They're not trying to hurt each other. It's just, it's a little aggressive. It's sure it could be abrasive, but it's, they're not crackheads out there. That was always
Yeah.
my thing. Like, especially like you're from this cut from the same cloth, you could say. Like people who look at these scenes from the outside, they're so quick to judge. My wife likes to bust my balls if I put on like some of the music I used to listen to back in the day. This is like diabolical. I'm like, it's a great word, but it's really not. Like if you actually looked at the way some of like, especially in like metal, like one of my favorite bands was Parkway Drive, and like super heavy, super aggressive, music. But the lyrics were so well written, so meaningful and deep. And it wasn't about just like violence and killing people like, the average Joe would talk shit about. There's real deep emotion, and it's literature, and a lot of people don't appreciate
I remember,
that.
I know. I remember like when I first started getting into like heavier stuff, and my mom would just be like, this stuff is just so angry and terrible. and I would be like, no, but they're a Christian band, Mom. They have, good values, and the lyrics are positive.
Yes.
And it's just, it was very hard for people to grasp that. I mean, yeah.
My friend
also,
Laquan,
like,
he said, "Is like, oh, you tell me a Christian metal band? What's next? You gonna tell me this gospel rapper is out there cursing?"
Yeah.
I was just having a conversation the episode I did before this with Danny, my friend Hesh. He gets a lot of shit because he likes music from the scenes, a lot of like the more emo-y kind of stuff, and people bust his balls about it. And when he heard me and Dan talking about how just people don't understand what it really is, I know he's probably listening to this right now saying, "Fucking thank you,"
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and that my transition went from kind of like pop punk and emo, and then I started getting into like the screamo-y stuff.
mm-hmm.
And then from going to shows, I started hanging out with kind of a crew of older kids who were all into hardcore bands and stuff. And then when I was a senior in high school, I was playing in 3 bands at once. I was playing in like pop band. I was playing in like a emo core, whatever you want to call it. Like Census Fail kind of band. And then I was playing in this like death metal band with these like old heads. They were like in their 20s.
Yeah. So you're nice with it. You got chops. Like to be in 3 bands at once as a high school student, speaks very highly of your skills behind the old axe.
I think people were just desperate.
Well, I think usually people are much more desperate for drummers and bass players because guitar players have always been a dime a dozen.
The metal band with the older guys, I played bass because they couldn't find a bass player. So yeah.
That's why I stuck to bass. It made me very valuable because I did.
Yeah, for sure.
I wasn't as good technically as some of the other people in the band, but I could put on the show, and I filled a spot that it's kind of hard to replace a bass player. Most people aren't really interested in it, and it just I don't know. That was kind of my personality more anyway. All right, so let's move a little forward. So when did you make the jump, like between high school and when you started doing music full time? Like what was that decision like? Like how do you make that decision? Did you work any kind of like odd jobs in between? Like.
So I went straight from high school to college. Kind of. I did a year.
Me too.
It was a very just rough year. I was in a weird place in my head. I dated this girl all through high school, and we had split up, and then I moved away from home for the first time, and I just was in a funk, and being in an educational place, just I didn't care at all. So I took a year off, which was
always well advised.
30 some years ago or whatever it was. So I was playing in this metal band. At that point I was like only playing like metalcore stuff, after like senior year. So I was playing this band, and we started kind of picking up some steam, and we decided to book a tour. So we hopped on MySpace, and we found this band in Kentucky, and we were like, hey, you guys are really cool. You book lots of shows in your area. let's put a 2-week tour together, and you book this and we'll book this and we'll, do it. So we did this tour in a minivan and a 4x6 trailer with 7 people.
Holy shit.
And
the band
so
was
band
a 7-piece band?
No, there were 6 of us and a merch guy.
Okay. 6 is still a good number.
Is that right? No, there were 6 of us, not 7. Sorry.
Okay.
But still, a small band.
Mm-hmm.
So the band that we
were you a member of Dragon Force?
So the band that we toured with, like I said, was from Kentucky. And after we finished that tour, their guitar player actually quit that band and joined EMAROSA.
Okay.
And him and I kept in touch, which is how this whole scenario circles. So the first tour I ever did, 2 weeks, it was so much fun. It was terrible. But it was, the first time you're ever on the road. It was just like,
it's an awesome feeling.
Dude, it was insane. So I was hooked, from day one. I was in. I was like, all right, I need to keep doing this. So we came home from that tour, and the guitar player who pretty much ran the band, because I joined the band a little later, he was like, I'm getting married and we can't practice here anymore, so the band's done. So we split, and I just kind of started working some odd jobs here and there. And then I started playing and writing with this girl that I was friends with at the time and a couple other friends. And we put together this kind of pop project, and I got a manager involved, and we had this deal lined up, and I quit my job, and we spent like 3 months writing this record. And we were getting ready to go record it. And like, I remember we were at, it was like Thanksgiving dinner, and I was probably 19 or 20, I want to say. I was probably like 22, 23. Sorry.
Okay.
So we're at like a big family dinner. My mom's like, I have some big news. Matt signed this big record deal, and his band's going to go do all this, record this record. And like 3 weeks later, the manager hits up the chick singing in the band and is like, hey, I think you should be a solo artist and you should fire your band. And
oh my God,
she took his word and, went to the studio and had a studio outfit, and they tried to write something. And the label was like, yeah, this isn't what we signed up for. This sucks. So they got denied. So like my mom made this whole but my mom made this whole spiel, and then it like literally 2 weeks later, it just fell apart, and I felt like such an idiot.
So let me ask you something.
So
were your parents like supportive of the music coming up?
Always.
Really? That's amazing, because I know a lot of parents.
So, and let me backtrack a little. So like no one in my family plays instruments. My family's not a music family. Like my parents barely listen to music. My like early childhood memories with music are just Christmas music and going to Broadway plays with my mom. Because like twice a year, my mom and I would take a bus trip and we would go see a play.
My mom did the same thing. Same thing.
Yeah, dude, I loved it. So, they were very supportive. I mean, when I dropped out of college and tried to start touring and stuff, they became a little less supportive for a little bit. But so then, moving forward again. So when that whole thing fell apart, there was a band that I was friends with at the time called Amen the Animal.
Okay.
They then became Life on Repeat. I don't know if you've ever heard that band.
I think that sounds familiar.
Fantastic band, super underrated. They got the shit end of the stick all the time. And they they were 10 times better than anything at the time, and maybe even current.
Mm-hmm.
So I was friends. I actually tried out to be a third guitar player in that band because they had 3 guitar players for a while. And then,
Are you sure you're not talking about Dragon Force?
I'm not. I've seen Dragon Force though.
Yeah. I don't even know any of their songs. That's just like a buzzword.
They all sound the same.
Yeah, everything sounds. It's all like that weird prog rock. It's just like, okay, you guys can shred. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's cool to watch like 2 songs, and then you're like, I get it. But so my buddy Andrew in that band hit me up and was like, hey, sorry this whole thing fell apart. We have a tour coming up. Like, you should just come out, hang out with us. You can do merch and lights and, just come chill with us. So I ended up touring with them for like 2 years, basically off and on, just doing odd end jobs. And shortly after that, I was at a show in Reading, and This or the Apocalypse was playing. And I had known those dudes from shows from back in the day, and Ricky came up to me and was like, hey, our bass player just decided he's leaving the band, and we were wondering if you would be interested in jamming with us. So at the time I was working through a temp agency, managing a shoe store in the Philadelphia outlets that was completely self-service. So the only thing that we had to do was ring people out. And the store was literally just an empty store with folding tables with boxes of shoes stacked on it.
Oh my God.
And then a curtain for the back room. It was as bare bones as you could get. So I was managing this pop-up temp store, and I got asked to try out for Toda. So I basically put a little studio set up in this back corner, and while we were at work, I would just sit there and learn the songs and go through all the parts and whatnot. And then
that's such a grind when you have to learn a bunch of songs at once.
Yeah.
I was in a cover band for a while, and in the beginning, having to learn just a massive playlist of songs. I mean, most of them were fairly easy, but there's just so much to take in. We would have to break it down and do it in batches. All right, let's learn these 8 now, and we'll learn these 8 in 3 weeks. It's fuck. And then you start remembering them, and it's I don't know, this wasn't that bad.
Yeah. And towards the end with EMAROSA, I mean, the headliner tour we did, we were doing 18 songs plus an intro and interludes and stuff. And man, my anxiety prepping for that stuff was just through the roof. And we'll get into that. Yeah. But yeah, so I started touring with This or the Apocalypse. I toured with them for about 5 years. I got to go to Europe for the first time, which was just...
Where in Europe did you guys get to play?
Everywhere.
Really?
It was a 6-week bus tour. So it was We Came as Romans, Miss May I, Word Alive, and Us. And there's a company over there called Avocado, and they're a booking agency, but they basically do everything. They are a backline company, a bus company, a booking agency, everything. So they have these double-decker buses, and the whole top is all bunks, and the bottom is just lounge area. And so we got to spend 6 months cruising around on this bus.
That's
or 6
awesome.
weeks cruising around this bus. Yeah, it was so sick. And I mean, we were an opening band, first time over there, and at the time, for whatever reason, that band just always got overlooked, and we would just get the shittiest tour offers, and it would be oh yeah, there's this tour, but you guys can only do the last week of it, and you have to drive all the way to New Mexico to start it. So maybe you can book 4 routing dates on the way there, and then do the week, and then just figure out getting home. And oh yeah, it's like $50 pay a night plus per, like just some total garbage.
Yeah.
So like we were just grinding and taking anything that we could and just trying to make it work. And then we go to Europe and we're on a bus, and like the shows were, some of them were meh, but man, like the Germany shows and like UK shows, and we played a couple festivals. We did, it's called Grows Rock. It's in like Belgium area.
Okay.
And there was like 450,000 people at this festival.
Holy shit.
Just like insane. One of my favorite memories of touring was at this festival. Were you a fan of the band Further Seems Forever?
I didn't really know. I don't think I know them.
Man, one of the other episodes, you were kind of meh and dissing on Receiving End of Sirens. You don't know.
Oh,
man,
I'm not. I was never dissing on them. That was the first time I had heard of them at that show, and like that, I liked them. I had both their albums, but I mean, it was.
I don't know.
Just to be clear,
you and Daniel were both kind of like, yeah, they were okay.
I meant no shade towards them. They seem like nice guys, and I liked some of their stuff. Don't you put that evil on me, Matthew.
That band was huge for me. Like, that band changed my idea of playing guitar 100%.
See,
just like their riffs and stuff.
Here's the other thing,
so
too.
Creative.
You got to keep on. I've been out of the scene, out of the loop for quite some time at this point. So even if I might have known them then, I probably forgot half the bands I liked at the time.
For sure.
So just keep that in mind.
All right. I'll let it slide.
Yeah.
All right. So anyways, we're at this festival, and Ricky and I are watching Circus Survive, and they get done, and Anthony Green walks off stage, and we say hi to him, and he's like, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like I gotta go. And we were like, oh yeah, we were just leaving too. We're going to watch Further Seems Forever. And he was like, that's where I'm going because they're one of my favorite bands. So me, Ricky, and Anthony Green went and stood on the side of stage at this huge festival and got to watch one of all three of our favorite bands. And I had this video somewhere of the three of us with our arms around each other, just screaming the words. And it was just like, just such a surreal moment to not only be there with those people and watching that band, but like just on the other side of the world. Like, it was really cool.
Especially with that amount of people, like that scope, that scale, it really kicks everything up, a couple notches. Man,
festivals over there and like nothing around here compares.
No, there's some things that they just do better than us.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things they do better than us.
Yeah, I was putting out just a subtle level of sarcasm on that one. There's quite a bit of things. I think I've actually railed about so many of them on several episodes here. All right, so we're at this point. You've been touring, you've been grinding. How does EMAROSA come into the picture?
So,
and also, how old were you at the time? Sorry.
Okay, so I ended up touring with Toda for Toda is this for the Apocalypse, for like 4.5 years or so, and then myself and the drummer decided it was time to move on. The band kind of fizzled. They have a new band now called Hawk, which if you're listening to this, you should go jam because it's so sick. But anyways, so I wasn't touring for a little while and was just kind of working retail jobs and stuff. And so my first tour, like I said, I toured with that band in Kentucky. So Jonas was the original, or one of the original guitar players in EMAROSA when they transitioned from the band that they were before that, which was called Corsets Are Cages. So Jonas and I kept in touch. EMAROSA starts, kind of blowing up with Johnny and stuff. And anytime they came through Philly or whatever, I went and hung out with Jonas. And they, Johnny stuff the band kind of fizzles a bit. They get back together, and Bradley enters the band, and they put out Verses. And the first tour that they do is the Chiodos tour. Mm-hmm. And so my girlfriend and I went to like 3 nights of that tour and hung out with them. At the time, I was working at this clothing shop called Cotton On, and they all came in and I gave my discount, and we hung out for a couple days over the span of a week that they were in the area. And so I guess shortly after that, further into the tour, things kind of started going downhill, and Jonas and Lucas, the drummer and the guitar player, decided that they were going to leave the band after that tour. So Bradley had reached out to me, because over the span of that week, I was pretty much texting with almost all of them, Jonas and Bradley, mm-hmm. and we were just kind of keeping in touch, and he had reached out to me and said, they were wondering if I was interested in coming on as like a hired on position, like a kind of like a fill-in for a couple tours. Yeah. So this was right around when Versus was actually coming out, because I'm pretty sure the Chiodos tour was right before that. So we had a batch of like 6 headline shows around the record release, and then we played Riot Fest in Chicago, and those were my first shows with the band. So I had I think we were playing like, I don't know, 12 or 14 songs. Like, it was a good amount of material to learn. Mm-hmm. So I learned as much as I could, and then I got in my car and I drove 10 hours to Kentucky, and I basically lived with ER for like 2 weeks, and we spent a week just playing through stuff every day and hanging out and kind of getting to know each other. And then at the time, the whole band was in Kentucky other than Bradley. He was, I think, still living in like the Detroit area. He might have been in Seattle. He's lived all over the place. I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah.
So
we're kind of spread out.
So he flew in then. Yeah. Well, it got even worse, which, for a band is really frustrating, mm-hmm. especially in this scenario. I can't even imagine. But anyways, so he flew in. We all rehearsed for like a week. Oh, let me also throw one thing in. Yeah. So the drummer who was filling in with me as well, we were both hired on. And I want to use hired on very loosely, because pay was yeah. Anyways,
yeah. thin.
So yes, and I mean, that's one thing that people don't understand is like small mid-level touring bands that you see, like, they might be opening for someone huge, Pierce the Veil, or doing some like arena tour or whatever, but like, touring is so expensive, and yes. People do not realize like the amount of costs that go into that, even on like the most bare bones scale. So some band that you look up to that you see opening up for these huge bands, or even like second or third of 5 on a bill or something, like, they're probably like not making much money at all.
Likely, yeah. You're right.
So,
most people have no concept of what it's like the grind involved, the struggle involved, because I mean, sometimes depending on where you are in kind of the trajectory of the band, you could be struggling just to scrape together money to eat, because everything else is going into the tour, into gas money, into pay, if you have to pay to park the the trailer somewhere. Like, it's a nightmare sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, up until a little before Peach Club or so, like, that whole period of Versus and 131, like, we were grinding and we were doing as many tours as possible, but like, we were not making much money. Contrary to what certain people that were involved may have led to believe. Um, but anyways, so we rehearse, we do these headline shows. Halfway through the first show is a home show, Lexington home show. First time the band's done a home show in a long time. So my anxiety is just like through the roof, right? And so there's probably 600 people there. Like, it was a big show.
Let me cut you off for 1 sec. I got to ask you this.
Sure.
Anybody who's performed live knows there's always like pre-show jitters. How were yours? Because I know with mine, I would always get the shaky right knee. That was always my thing. Like, I would feel nervous, my right knee would shake. Did you have any kind of weird thing like that?
For me, I never really got nervous to go on stage unless like something like that where I was very new to everything and it was unfamiliar territory. I was just super anxious about. But like, once we got into a grind and we were touring all the time, like, I never really got jitters unless family was there. If family was there for whatever reason, like, it just threw me off. And then I just get real shaky and flustered and like, yeah.
I remember one time we played a show close to home, and one of my uncles like drove up to come see the show. I was like, oh, cool. And he brought like a couple buddies or whatever. We get off, and this is a little random, and it's kind of not really related. I just thought of it, so I had to throw it in here. But he's like, oh, this is my friend so-and-so. He plays drums for Boys to Men. I was like, oh, really? Like, nice to meet you, man. Yeah, man, you guys are cool. But I don't know. I didn't. I'm like, you know the drummer for Boys to Men? Like, that was the most random thing I think you've ever said to me in my entire life. And we've had a lot of conversations about random shit.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Keep going.
No. I can't even imagine what I would feel like after that.
Yeah. Glad I'm not the drummer.
All right. So this first show, so prior to this, I had only been playing bass. So I like didn't have guitar gear, and I got this call to do these shows, and I think let's say I had like a month. It wasn't a super long period of time, but it was like enough that I could procrastinate until the end and still feel like shit about myself. So I hit up a buddy of mine, and he was like a A&R for this guitar company in California, and they sent me these two guitars. One of them was this really nice hollow body guitar. So we're like second song in, and there's this part where I forget what song it was, but there was like a big ring out and then like a hit, and then it comes in, and there's this ring out, and then at the hit I like punched my guitar to like make it like resonate, and I literally just went straight through the hollow body. And so I like Jonas, the guy who I'm like taking over for, is like standing on the side of stage next to me, and I'm just like trying to like look at him and be like, get my other guitar. And like, anyways, so the next day I switched the two guitars that I'm using because the one's broken, and we play in like, at the time we were playing in a couple different tunings. So I left that one in a different tuning. So I thought, so we go to start this song. It's not in the right tuning. And it's like, everything's on a mapped out click. So like they're just into it, and we start playing, and I'm like in a wrong key. So I like stop and like go off stage, switch guitars, make sure it's back in tune correctly, and I walk back on stage. And this was my first just insanely depressing, anxious moment of dealing with Bradley. Because that dude just did not talk to me for the next like 3 days. And I remember we got off stage, and I just ran outside and ran down to the end of the block, and was just like talking to my girlfriend and just crying hysterically. And it was just like, this man's going to send me home. This is it. I'm done, and it was.
I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
Dude, it was the worst.
When I started, like I had like almost pretty much no experience at all playing, and my best friend had been playing in bands for years. I was like 20, 21, and he said, "Oh, you could join my band. Just try out, and if you play bass, we don't have a bass player, so see how you do." So I tried out. They're like, "Yeah, you good? We'd love to have you." Like, how long you been playing? So, like 5 months. So I know, I'm just trying to keep up with these other guys who have so much more experience. And, we were only a handful of shows in. We got to open for Census Fail right before there's, what's the album? What's the one with Calling All Cars on it? They were like doing like a pre-tour couple shows. So we got to play with them in Philly. And, I was like, I was a fucking idiot. We were playing at the North Star, I think it's called. It's in like West Philly. And I didn't, yeah, it sucked. I didn't like it. But they had, I didn't have a pedal tuner. Like I just would tune it before we go on. I'm like, all right, it's fine. I'll be fine. Because, no experience. Didn't know any better. So like midway through our set, my bass went I must have hit it on something, went way out of tune. And then for the whole second half of our set, it just sounded like dog shit. And it kept telling me like, something's wrong. I was like, I don't know. Can't be me. I tuned before we got on. So I was so like, when I realized, it was like the last song I realized that I was all out of tune. It was my fault. I fucked up. I was just like, that deflated feeling where you're just like, I made a complete ass of myself, not only in front of a big room full of people that I don't know, in front of strangers, but in front of, a big name band that was giving us a helping hand by letting us open for them for these couple shows. I blew it. I blew it for all of us. We're done. We might as well quit right now.
Well, dude, how do you think I felt? We were headlining. It was a record release show. But yeah. So, anyways, we got through it, and so like 3 days later, we're playing Riot Fest, and we're pouring rain. We played in the pouring rain. I was 100% sure that my gear was just ruined.
Yeah.
Like the monitors in the whole front of the stage were covered in garbage bags so that we could play. We were all sliding all over the place. Like it sucked, but it was still cool because it was Riot Fest.
Yeah.
But we were on, the Rise Records, like side stage in the far corner, and like Guar played right before us, which was fantastic to watch and be a part of.
Holy shit.
But yeah. But there weren't a ton of people there for us because it was pouring, and we were one of 30 bands playing.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow I got asked to stick around, and so we did another couple tours, and at that time we were just rehearsing in Kentucky. So I forgot to touch on this before. So when I first came out, the guy who was playing drums with us was Brandon Morgan from Misery Signals.
Mm-hmm.
And Misery Signals was one of my favorite like heavy bands ever, still is. So I was almost more nervous to jam and play with that dude than I was with like the rest of the band. But man, he's such a great dude, and he was just great to be on tour with.
Shout out to him.
He now drum techs for Fall Out Boy and lives with Andy Hurley. So
okay, not bad.
yeah. But yeah, so we kept doing some tours, and I at the end of one of the tours, towards the end of like the Versus cycle, when we were starting to talk about, the band was starting to talk about recording another record and stuff. I sat down with everybody and I was just like, look, I don't care about money, obviously, because you're barely paying me to be here to begin with. But I want to write with you guys. I want to be a part of the creative process, and like, I want to do this next record with you. And, I'm 100% on board. So I didn't hear from anyone for like 3 weeks after we got home. And I was just like, all right, well, I guess this, probably isn't going to happen. And my girlfriend and I and her brother were at a concert seeing City in Color. And
oh my God, one of my favorites. One of my all-time
Same.
favorites. All time.
Same. Yeah, that's one of my girlfriend's favorites for sure. And I got a text, and it was like, "Hey, we've talked about it tonight a bunch, and we'd like to formally, offer you a part playing guitar in the band." So, yeah,
Sigh
that
of
night,
relief,
like
right
watching
there.
them was, yeah, for sure. So we, ordered a round of drinks, and it was a good night. So yeah, then we moved into doing 131, and things were pretty good with the band at that point. It was just like touring. Bradley was just always very closeted and kept to himself, and which I understand a lot of people like that are on tour, but this was like kind of to a different level.
To the point where it made
And
things awkward.
yeah, and we're like, people in other bands were just like, "Hey, so like your dude hates us, right?" Like, I don't understand. Um, so that's where I think things kind of started to, on like touring scale, kind of go on a decline. And I understand from Bradley's perspective. He joined this band and felt like he had big shoes to fill from Johnny, and there was a lot of fans who lashed out because it wasn't Johnny, because people just want to listen to the same shit all the time. They're idiots. So it was just things like that got to him, and it was understandable. And so we did 131 in Nashville, and we spent like 6 weeks there with this guy named Casey Bates. He's done a bunch of cool records, fantastic dude. We had a great experience. He was just down to try anything. We all got along really well. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment in downtown Nashville, and like we had a really great time, and things felt really good. And then like some things with the label kind of started not going our way, and tour offers kind of started not going our way. And I guess we put that record out around Warped Tour, so that was the one kind of shining light at the beginning of that. And that whole experience overall was 90% positive. There were some interactions between him and some crew members that we had at times that left very bad tastes in everyone's mouths. And I think a lot of people who we brought on tour with us took the brunt of a lot of things that they didn't deserve for really no reason other than just unrealistic expectations.
So basically, I mean, whatever,
especially for what someone's getting paid.
It seems like whatever problems and conflicts this guy's dealing with internally, he's just lashing out at anyone close to him. Like, he's not kind of learning how to deal with shit.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any more context that I might be missing? I just see, like, in general, this guy's got a shit attitude.
Yeah, and I don't really have context because he just was always like the most closed off person I've been around. And when you're touring and you have X amount of people in a 20-foot box 24 hours a day, you learn people's boundaries pretty quickly. And one thing I will say that I think I'm extremely thankful for, as far as what you pick up from touring and learning being on the road, is I think it makes you, or at least did for me, much more just considerate and just kind of cognizant of other people's, whether it's what they're feeling or what they're doing, or like, this person, needs it to be super quiet when he sleeps, or, just like little things like that.
That's called emotional intelligence.
Kind of learn to, man. Like, you have to
super important.
Pick up on everyone's little cues. but like we always had a different crew. We always had a different crew. We always had a different drummer. And part of it was because of the way he treated people, and part of it was because he just refused to like let anyone else in the band drummer wise. Like there was several people who we wanted to bring on board, and like Destin was the last drummer that we had, young kid from New York. He's played on SNL now with like Dua Lipa and a bunch of people. Kid's crushing it. He's such an insane drummer and just a fantastic human being. And like he toured with us for the last year or two, and we were for a while saying like we'd love to bring this kid in. Same like Kyle we had for a while before him, and like there was just all of these different drummers for whatever reason. So you're constantly touring with this array of different people, which has its own confusingness to itself.
You always have to learn a new person.
Yeah, and stage is even more. Like that was the thing that was bugging me the most. Just like the inconsistency drumming wise in tours. It's not even like inconsistent where a drummer's playing bad. It's just people have different styles. They play fills differently. They take cues differently. They hear things differently. So, when you're on stage, you mesh together, and having to constantly change that around, one of the main points holding everything together is drums.
Yeah.
So when that's constantly changing, like it became very, very frustrating. And our crew was pretty much the same way. And it was just, I think on that end, it was more of, just the way people were treated. And I mean, the amount of people brought to tears and panic attacks, and just like, it was just so unnecessary.
Jesus.
So unnecessary. And myself included in that. Like, so all of these things basically built up to the point where over the last 2.5 years where we were touring, we were rehearsing at my house primarily. My girlfriend bought a house, and we have a big garage, so we were rehearsing here. So everyone would fly here, stay here for a couple weeks, and all these things started kind of building and progressively kind of getting worse. And then my anxieties and insecurities would flare up more and more, and it would get to a point where I would literally make myself sick before tours. Like the band would get here, and I would just be having panic attacks, just because I think for a while there's like this facade of control kind of put out, and he jokes around it and is like, oh no, we're a band, and it's like everybody does it, and it's like, but that's not the case at all.
Yeah, it's not funny because it's like, no, you're really doing this shit. Like, you're really trying to.
And when, and then when you have that, and then the way you see all of these people being treated, and it just kind of, it made me very scared that at just like that, he was going to have the ability to take it away from me and to fire me or something. So my anxiety before tours would just be insane, and I would put off rehearsing to the last minute because I was so stuck in my head about it, and I knew that if I start playing songs, then I'm gonna start thinking about it, and then it was just like this constant circle where your fear and insecurities just create procrastination, and just kind of manifest this whole separate conversation in your head.
That's got to be similar to kind of like having an abusive parent, because obviously your position in the band was, you weren't one of the founding members, so he kind of had you there like seniority wise. So, you kind of limited into how much you can say, and how much input you're allowed to contribute. So it's like, it's that constant fear of like, is this person gonna flip out and just fucking kick me out? Or if you're a kid and you have dad comes home drunk one day, like I want to steer clear. I don't want to trigger him. I don't want to set him off, because who knows what's gonna happen. like that kind of anxiety, living under that, constantly, it really takes a toll on you. And, I can only imagine what it was like, in your position. So there's no part of that is healthy. Just,
Yeah. And I mean, when we would be on tour, I pretty much hung out with ER the whole time. I mean, me and him just were always kind of on the same page. We like to explore and walk around a lot. And well, he doesn't like to walk around as much as I do because he's pretty lazy. But so it was pretty much him and I, and there became this kind of dynamic towards the end. So ER is EMAROSA, 100%. He like started the band pretty much in the Johnny era. Like his dad and him wrote a lot of the lyrics for the songs. Like ER is EMAROSA. But the thing is, he also is a very laid back and just kind of chill person who doesn't have an opinion.
Kind of passive.
So yes, very, very much. And then you have Bobby, the other person in the band at the time, and he is the new guy, so he doesn't want to voice too much of an opinion. So the four of us kind of had this dynamic for a while where it was like, I'm pretty vocal and I'll speak my mind most of the time. So it ended up just being, this two-way conversation between Riley and I most of the time, because the other two just were in different positions of conversation. So, things just always, traveling wise, just were stressful until the very end. When Peach Club came out, I think he kind of started feeling more in his own shoes and more comfortable. So, I'm not going to say things were bad all the time, because they weren't. Like, I have a bunch of great memories from Warped Tour or all these tours from all of us. I can't say that, but
yeah, no.
There was just a lot of very unnecessary negative aspects that were brought in for no reason, especially towards other people, who weren't even directly involved with us. It's one thing if it's, in the immediate circle, but
once it starts spilling out with, into other people who are just kind of tangentially involved, that could get really ugly and make things really, really uncomfortable, And
I think, I think one thing that I do kind of regret is that, like, myself and other people didn't really stand up for those people as much as we should have at the time. And I think that the fear that we kind of said played into that.
Absolutely.
100%. But, since everything has happened, pretty much, I've reached out to almost every person that has ever toured with us and had a conversation and, said some type of apology from my own end and whatnot. And, I've met some incredible people that we've brought on the road with us and been able to travel with. So I'm thankful for that 100%.
Well, see, that's kind of one of the pieces of collateral damage when you're dealing with someone who's like that, who's just kind of like narcissistic, doesn't really care how they treat people, is that you kind of, everybody else that's with you is now guilty by association, whether it's, in reality or just in their own heads. Because especially if you see something happening, like an injustice or something to that effect, now, if you don't speak up, even if, there may not be any, like, a winning scenario for you in that situation. So, you're passive, or, it's not your business, but just that feeling now that you have to carry with you, it sucks. And it's such a heavy weight to carry emotionally and mentally, that, it weighs on you. So, I mean, the fact that you were actually, even after the fact, reached out to some of these people, that says a lot, I think, about your character, because not everybody can be expected to act in that moment. That's just the way life is. Sometimes we look back and fuck, I should have done that. How many times I did that? I'm standing in the shower, like washing my head, thinking like, fuck, I should have said something then. And it could be 20 years ago. Like, but that stuff stays with us. And so I understand, I empathize with you, like, what it's like carrying that burden.
So one thing that I've definitely kind of realized through all this, and one of my last interactions with Bradley, like I said this to him, I've definitely through touring realized that I'm very much an empath, and I feed off of other people's emotions very, very much.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I like my own emotions feeding off of his, may have exacerbated situations, and I may have read into them, and maybe things weren't, as much as I in my head made them out to be or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there is just, no matter what I like say or bring up or try to own up to or whatever, there's just never been a shred of remorse or apology or just anything.
No self-awareness, nothing.
Nothing.
That's I mean, that what you're laying out is basically, it sounds like a typical textbook narcissistic behavior.
1,000%. And that, I think, was just one of the kind of major deciding factors for me to not move forward with this anymore. Just kind of like reflecting on that more, and just kind of taking all that in and trying to look at it now, that it's past.
Well, hindsight's 2020. Here's something I'm thinking about too, is that, we're talking about narcissistic behavior, especially with a singer or a frontman. I feel like there's something about playing that role in a band, like being in that position. It kind of lends itself to maybe people that lean that way already, or potentially even kind of helps it along in that direction, because there's something about being the main person in the spotlight. You're singing, it's your voice out there. People are, they're listening to your lyrics. Like, you're the one kind of controlling the show. There's something about being in that position. It's almost like the old saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like, not everybody is really, I think, built to handle that position. And it really shows, I've found, in just the handful of bands I've been in. Like, that's kind of a thing. And no knock, like, shout out to my man Tony D, because Tony's a good kid. He's a good egg, this guy, he's a good egg. But there's something about that position that I think it can kind of warp people's perspective. So where there might already be, a budding problem, that just exacerbates it and really, makes it worse.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Because you've been in a few bands. Like, is that something you've noticed? Without saying any names, obviously.
No, for sure. I think you're very correct. Those type of people, I think, gravitate towards that type of position for the most part. But I don't know, man. My experience with the bands that I have toured with, I haven't met a ton of people like that outside of our own, especially not to that level.
Mm.
I feel like, we did Warped Tour, and then we did a tour with Pierce the Veil and Sum 41. And the singer of Sum 41 has had a crazy life, and he keeps to himself, and he has like a bodyguard who follows him around, and he just like doesn't interact with people. And that's his thing, and that's his life. And it comes off that way to certain people, but I don't think that was necessarily the case there.
And we also don't know what his situation really is.
For sure. And that's the thing, like I said earlier, I really got into playing music to just travel and be with friends and be a part of that energy. But it also was just meeting people all over the country from different walks of life. And, if I can help anyone in the tiniest way, then, that is my motivation for music. It was never sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of vibe.
Those things are nice, but that's not the main goal.
Yeah. So, but having that mentality, and then dude, we would be at meet and greets, and like things that dude would say under his breath about people, and just like comments that would get muttered. It was just like it was painful to be around sometimes, man.
Mhm.
And just the amount of times that I heard in the van, like, oh, why the fuck do I need to talk to that band? They can't do me any favors.
Mm.
Like, they're not going to do anything for me. So why would I be friends with them? It's just
That bad
shit like
attitude
that.
is poison. It's absolute
Yeah,
poison.
dude. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then, living trapped in a box with that all the time, like it consumed me. It was just soul suckingly depressing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And, we would get to places and load in, and then I would dip and go walk around the city with headphones on for a couple hours, or I like to walk and explore. So that is another big motivation for touring for me. All these bird scooters now, man. Oh my god, that has been
It's amazing.
the best thing. Get to cruise around some downtown area and just
Hell yeah! I used to work one of the jobs I worked at in Hoboken. For a while they had Lime scooters, the same thing eventually.
Yeah.
Essentially, but they had them for maybe a year, and then they were like, "Yeah, fuck this, we're not doing these anymore," because people were just, Hoboken could
Throwing
be a
them
party
everywhere.
town. They'd leave them everywhere. They're riding them on the sidewalks, running into old ladies and shit. People.
Yeah.
I think one or two people got run over. So it
Dude,
was
those
just
things cruise.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. For me, I'm working all the way uptown. I could jump on one of these things at lunchtime, go all the way down by the train station, jump into Surf Taco for lunch and make it back on time, which I would never be able to do. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But, with most things in life, people abuse it, and then they ruin it for everyone else.
Yep.
So, anyway, back on point. So now you're in this fucked up situation now where you're just kind of living with this toxicity. You're trapped in a box with it. So what happens next?
I mean, we tried to address it multiple times. Our manager would reach out, and it was a roller coaster for sure. There would be times where things were really good, and then there would be times where things were really bad, and it was pretty much like that up until we were writing and starting to record Peach Club. And then so we did that at the Madden Studios in LA with this guy named Courtney Ballard, who is one of the greatest human beings. I love that dude. He is just such a positive, awesome dude. Fantastic to work with. So we had a really great experience doing that record, and like it kind of rekindled some things. And I remember one of the last weeks we were there, I think it was like we had just finished, I want to say like Cautious or something, and we were just all so hyped on everything, and we all went out to dinner with Courtney to some place across the street from Bradley's apartment where we were staying in North Hollywood, and we all got pretty drunk, and we came back and we just had this like long bro down just drunk mumbling conversation about how it was like this was it, and like this record was going to be it, and it was this lineup or nothing, and like I don't know, things felt really good. And
I gotta say, having listened to that album, I feel like it shows. Like the energy on the album was everything clicks. It sounds good. I don't know. Maybe that's something I'm just imagining, or that people just kind of imagine they can feel. But I mean, it was a great album. If I had been a guy that helped write and record that album, I would be fucking feeling good too. So kudos to you, sir.
Thanks. I mean, it was a cool process. Bradley had been writing with this one other guy, and 2 or 3 of the songs they had kind of written most of. And then everything else just ended up being this like really awesome mesh of Courtney's ideas and all of us. And I mean, I'm not gonna beat around the bush and say like, oh yeah, just the four of us did it, and like Courtney was a very big part of that record, and he's kind of felt like an honorary member of the band from that point forward. So yeah, we put that record out, and I don't even remember the first couple tours that we did. I know we did a summer tour with what is that band? They were on Warped Tour with us too. I can't remember.
The Receiving End of Sirens.
I wish. Funny story. I actually, ER and I love that band so much that in the end of 131, in the last track, the whole end is this mix of melodies from the record, and us like throwing trash against the wall, and it just kind of crumbles apart. And there are a couple Treos lyrics mixed in there as well that we had thrown in as a little Easter egg, because we all just love that band.
Shout out to them.
Yeah.
I did not besmirch that band, just for the record, Your Honor.
But yeah, so we did some tours on that record. We went to UK and Europe, and we did Europe with Don Broco, and that was incredible. And then we came home, had a drummer transition, and then did record release shows across the country, and then we did Hawaii and Japan. And that was really cool because we played Hawaii on Valentine's Day, and my girlfriend and Yar's girlfriend flew out, and we got to spend like almost a week in Hawaii before we went to Japan.
That's badass, man.
It was really great. So yeah, I mean that whole trip was really, really incredible. Japan is one of the most amazing places I've ever been to.
One of these days I'm gonna get there.
Dude, it is just another world. Like the cluster fuckery of Times Square times 100, but in perfect order, and not a single car horn. No one's yelling. There's not smells of piss everywhere. Like it's insane just how polite and respectful their culture is, and just like, man, it was so awesome. Such a breath of fresh air.
The piss smell is kind of, that gives the city a character, you know?
Yeah, sure.
You know, you come out of Port Authority, you see all the hookers lined up. It's, it's charm is what it is. That was a joke. I'm joking. Never visited a lady of the night, so. Anyway, so, okay, you finished Japan. Peach Club is out now. You guys, ostensibly, you're doing pretty well on the up and up.
Yeah, so I want to say we do a couple other tours, and then that puts us up to like winter of 2019. We announced a Peach Club headliner, and we played the whole record, a couple old songs, some intro interlude stuff. This was the first tour we had ever brought like full production. Like we had a full light show. So like we went all in, and the whole tour sold out every single day.
That's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah, it was incredible. So we all flew home like 2 days before Christmas, just on top of the world. And, we're starting to plan spring and summer tours, and we're booking studio time in the spring to record a single, and like things are going really well. We're all in a really good place, and things just seem to be meshing well. And then COVID hits, and things kind of get put on hold. And California kind of eased up a little in June, so we had booked some studio time, and shortly before that, our manager was brought up to Rock Nation, which is Jay-Z's management company. So between that, they were offering us basically like an equity deal. So instead of a label, they were just going to front us, a bunch of money and give us a budget, and we could do whatever we wanted with it. It was like literally the dream scenario. And then we had a publishing deal lined up as well. So, we have these two deals lined up. Things are looking incredible. Early June, we book like a week with Courtney, and we were planning on doing, a single or two, starting to kind of release some content slowly over COVID and whatnot. So we all land in California, and we get to a B&B, and literally like within an hour of all of us getting settled in at this B&B, there are allegations brought forward against Bradley from his previous band, and we're all just like at a standstill and have no idea what's going to happen. So this hits on Twitter, and we instantly booked our flights home, and we were just kind of like, you need to kind of figure this out, and we all need to figure out what the next step is, and we just need to take some space. So we all flew home, and man, let me just tell you, one of the most just depressing memories I have is 4 grown men sitting in an Airbnb just staring at their phones, sighing for like 3 hours straight, waiting for an Uber to take you to the airport. Just dead silence and sighing. It sucked. So shortly after we got home, we got the news that basically all the deals that we had lined up were dropped, and we lost everything.
Everything all at once.
Yes.
Jesus. So now, these allegations, just for the listener's sake, I mean, we don't have to get too much into detail, but they were obviously a kind of sexual in nature. There wasn't any accusations of like rape or anything like that. Everything was just kind of inappropriate behavior, I guess we could say. And I don't,
it all revolved around some forms of text communications, between two people. They claim to be a certain age, and things were very questionable in nature. But I do want to say, like, this was all alleged prior to EMAROSA.
Yeah.
And then
not only was he not in the band, you weren't either.
Correct. And I do want to state very clearly that, like, myself and anyone in our band, or honestly anyone who was touring with us at all, if we would have like seen or known of anything like that going on, or if that was even remotely regular behavior or anything, like, we would have called that shit out and shut it down so quick. And it was never the case. Like, dude, we're all like old boring dudes. We go to a hotel and we sit on our phones, and he would go to the gym and for an hour, and we would sleep, and then we would wake up and sit in the van and do the same shit. Like, we weren't partying. Like, there just was never scenarios really where that type of thing even was around us very much. And he never presented himself to people in that manner.
Well, it also matters too, like you said. This happened in a prior band, so I mean, it really wasn't even, aside from the fact that it was that guy, it had nothing to do with the current band, EMAROSA. So it's very important for listeners to understand that. And I mean, obviously, this information, like, some of it's out there online. If someone wants to go try to look for themselves. And from what I've read, it kind of falls into one of those really uncomfortable gray areas in terms of like Me Too movement type stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like there was no crime alleged to have been committed either, which is also very important to keep in mind. It's one of those like Aziz Ansari kind of deals where it's like you read it and it's like, okay, well, clearly this seems fucked up, like weird, and but we're not alleging that this guy committed a crime, but at the same time, like for instance with the Aziz Ansari thing, that's one guy. He's not part of a band. He's not part of a group or a crew or anything.
Sure.
So that guy, suffers the consequences of this whole situation. Whereas now, in the case of Bradley, not only is he taken down, but you guys along with him, which really sucks, especially considering this all happened allegedly before you guys even really knew each other.
Yep.
So it's one of those situations where it's like collateral damage. You guys are all caught up in the wake of this scenario. So
yeah, man, and
go ahead.
Like you're already trying to wrap yourself around COVID and how this is going to move forward, and then this hits, and it's just like it was. I didn't know what to think or what to feel for a very long time. I still don't, to be completely honest. And
that's fair. That's very fair.
So yeah, I really, after that, I went and at some point I did a cross country trip and picked up all of our gear from our manager's house, and I just kind of spent the summer just kind of reflecting over the last 7 years, and the allegations in which they brought forth were kind of the tipping point for things falling apart for us. But I think in my mind that wasn't necessarily the final justification of like me removing myself from that situation.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of took me like just reflecting over everything that was put onto other people on top of that, as well as what I personally have gone through. And I know I'm definitely not the only one who toured with this band who had severe panic attacks and dealt with a lot of insane anxiety for periods of time. It was just unnecessary.
Yeah, I guess it became the straw that broke the camel's back. Like it was already kind of hanging on by a thread, so to speak. And now with this, it's kind of like, well, there's really no reason to stay anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I wish that wasn't the case. And, I wish we could just pick up from that tour and that things didn't happen the way that they did, obviously. Because, I don't want to sound braggy or anything, but if you saw us live, I really think that we had something special.
No, that's 100% fair. You guys were good. You guys were very good.
Like,
there's a reason you guys were seeing success at that point.
Yeah, and like I said in the beginning, like for me, music is just like about the energy in that performance, and I just always just wanted to go 110%. Like, dude, when I was playing a metal band, when I was touring with Toda, I had a philosophy in my head that if I wasn't throwing up and feeling like I was dying by the end of the set, that I fucked up and I didn't do it right. And I just that was just my MO. And I mean, a metal band's definitely a different vibe.
Very.
But
it's kind of funny you mentioned that when like I said, I came up playing metal, and then eventually me and my best friend Drew started a cover band. It's kind of, you see remnants of the metal days come out in the cover band. Like we were playing like pop songs. I think the closest thing to metal we played was Paramore. And even in that, playing that, we were doing like synchronized headbangs. It's like, all right, we're really going all in on this. I think, I think the audience at bars in fucking Point Pleasant are like, oh, okay, interesting. These guys are really all about Paramore, I guess. I don't know, but I was just saying, like, yeah, that's the sign of a good showman, is that you're really just leaving it all out on the stage.
I mean, that was just like my outlet for a long time, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So
it's
now,
go ahead.
So obviously now the band is essentially kind of dissolving. So what, was there ever a conversation about just replacing Bradley? Like, was that even like a possibility?
No, I think after the amount of struggle that we endured getting past Johnny and his whole slew of
Toxic,
bullshit.
toxic fans.
Yeah, well, just that dude sucks. But yeah, just like overcoming that just took so much that we knew trying to do that again after we had gotten to, where we were, it just didn't make sense. And it's, it's like we talked a little bit about people's like unrealistic expectations or like interpretations of things. When over summer or whatever, I would tell people, like, oh yeah, I stepped away from the band or whatever. And people are just like, oh, so you're just gonna like start a new band, or it's just like, no, dude, like you don't understand how much fucking work and energy goes into that.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm fucking drained.
Yeah, man, we spent years like making $100 a night just to try to get to a point where we could be, somewhat self-reliant. Like, I'm 35 years old. I can't spend another 5 years doing that. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. So, but yeah, it just, people don't understand that, which is fine. But
Yeah, you
it's
can't.
it's frustrating when you're dealing with that, and people are just like, oh, you can just like, do something new, and it's like, no, man.
No, I can't. I think anybody in a creative kind of space understands that, especially whether you're a musician, a comedian, a podcaster. It takes so much in the beginning just to get started and get going and build some kind of momentum that having to start back from square one, it's just like, I would rather not do it at all than have to do that, and it takes so much energy, so much mental energy. It takes so much of your life and dedication that it's just, listen, I would rather it just have run its course than have to go back and scratch and fight and claw from the beginning again. And people,
Yeah, for sure.
you can't understand it. You can't even kind of verbalize it. You have to have been there and experience it. So it's very easy for people on the outside to say that. Oh, why don't you just start a new band? Like, no, I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't have it in me now anymore.
At some point, I will, and I'm having conversations with people now, slowly. But it's not gonna. I'm not looking to start touring full time again, for where I'm at in my life, my relationship and home life and whatnot. And, I definitely, in some fashion, will always continue to play music. But I mean, this whole situation has just made like my anxiety towards music so high that I literally haven't touched my guitar since like June. I'm like recording a buddy's project for fun right now, like helping them record stuff. And I'll like noodle around with a part with him every once in a while or something. But I started playing drums this summer just because I had this like aversion towards guitar.
I had a similar thing when my last band dissolved. It ended essentially with almost in a fist fight. So by the end, when you, especially if you're a touring band, you guys were light years ahead of where I ever was. But even on that small level, like it takes so much of your life. You miss out on all things with your friends and family. You're out, you're working. You don't work the same hours as everyone else. You work nights. You're playing shows. You're traveling from place to place. You can't do these things. And then, when it eventually ends, especially if it ends in an ugly way, it's almost like it leaves a scar that you're always going to see and feel when you see that instrument. Because I did the same thing when my band broke up. I didn't touch my bass for years. I switched to acoustic guitar just to do something different, and I just was a douchebag who played at like campfires and shit like that. So I would just play like Everlong and fucking John Mayer. But it does, like it's like that invisible scar. It leaves some kind of trauma where you just like I can't even I don't even want to think about it because it's going to bring up bad memories. It's going to make me feel regrets, things I should have done differently. And I 100% understand how you feel with that, especially when it comes to not picking up your instrument for a long time after. Like, I ended up actually selling my bass that I played in that band. So now I only have my old metal bass. If you were in studio, you'd be able to see it, but you can't see it right now. So now, where does Matt find himself today?
Confused and lost and trying to figure out a new career path. Just I've been the last like 4 years of touring. I've been working landscaping whenever I've been home. So I'm like kind of doing that. And I've been working for a guy over the winter doing window treatment installations, like installing blinds and shutters. So I'm gonna start working with him more. So I don't know, man. I'm taking life a day at a time. We're getting ready to sell our house and try to, find another spot with a little more land sometime soon. So I'm just kind of taking it a day at a time here. And
yeah. That's when the music is such a part of your life, especially when it's your career, and now you have to kind of go back and like, all right, now I have to figure out what else I'm going to do with my life. It's a perfect time to start up some kind of other kind of outlet. Like for me, I'm not going to do music anymore, so I started this. This was my outlet. And for a long time where there was that in-between period, I just kind of felt, and I didn't even realize it at the time, I felt almost empty. Like there's nowhere for me to make something, whether it's even just, drawing pictures with my kid or, maybe fucking around writing a little tune here or there, even if I wasn't even recording it. But something, you gotta find a way to scratch that itch. Because for me, this helped so much, just especially having conversations about mental health and stuff like that. Like that, it's almost as good as going to therapy. Not quite, but almost.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you and I touched on this a little bit before we started recording, but like it's hard growing up, I think, in our generation. How old are you?
I'm 36.
Okay. So I'm 35. So like I feel like our parents' generation was definitely a generation that bottled things up and didn't really know how to communicate things very well. And I don't blame them per se. I think, it's one good thing that has come out of the internet, social media, and the amount of information that people have access to. It's definitely a double-edged sword because there's a shit ton of negatives to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I think just having more conversations and talking things out in general is something that, I never had growing up. And looking back now, I'm like, oh my God, like I was so anxious or so depressed here, or like this was happening or whatever the case. And it's like, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to communicate that or anything. So it's good that, you have that outlet and that it kind of gives that not only to you or to the person that you're speaking with, but also to the listeners. That's cool.
I've told this story a bunch of times on the show, but it was a podcast just like this. Just, it was just a couple dads just having conversations about what it's like raising their kids. That to me helped me at one of the hardest points in my life, when just kind of learning how to exist. I was a new husband and a new dad all of a sudden. That really kind of made me feel not alone. And it's stuff like that. Like it doesn't take much. Just to feel like somebody understands what you're going through and that you're not alone. It goes such a long way, because just that feeling of isolation, that in itself that could be a killer, because that lends itself to what you mentioned just now, is that previous generations didn't have these kind of outlets. Not only did they not have these outlets, it wasn't even socially acceptable to talk about this with, your friends and peers. Like you get called gay and weak. Like, that's not a thing really nowadays. I'm sure, it's still out there, but for those of us who aren't obsessed with, trying to appear tough and macho, just be a real human being, there's a lot that can be learned from one another, and just having these conversations and allowing yourself to be vulnerable, because it's in those moments that we make the most growth, that we learn the most about ourselves, and we learn the most about the people around us. Like if you put yourself out there to somebody and they're receptive to it and they're empathetic and understanding, you think, okay, this is a person that I can keep around. I can be around this person and share things with this person, and they're not gonna judge me. They're not gonna treat me like shit. They're not gonna call me light and loafers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
For
that
sure.
again, the internet obviously comes with its fair share of downsides. So just don't read the comments, people. But listen, I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're at least able to talk about these things, because going through that situation for all those years, and it's almost, would you say it's kind of similar to feeling like a prisoner in some respects, where it's like, this is your career, like you want this to succeed and to work out, but at the same time you're kind of stuck with this person who's just toxic and who's just exhibiting poisonous behavior.
Yeah, man. I felt trapped a lot of the time because I wanted it to work out so bad, and I wanted it, to grow and be successful to the point where I knew it could be. And we put so much, like, literal blood, sweat, and tears into it. It sucked.
Yeah, completely understandable. Well, I think we're running up close to the end right now. Let me just ask you this one question before we get out of here. Sure. If you could go back and do any one thing differently at any one point along your journey, would you? And if you would, what would it be?
I don't think I would, because I am not someone who, like, really tries to believe or live in regrets. I think that's one of the biggest things with cancel culture that is just destructive, is there's no room for growth. Like, we've gotten to a point where we're just, like, trying to, hold someone accountable for something stupid they said like 10 years ago. And yes, there are a lot of circumstances that are warranted, and there are a plethora of shitty people who deserve to get called out or lose their platform. I back that 100%. But we're starting to kind of, like, I don't know, like, over romanticize it or something. And it's just like
overcorrection.
Yeah. And we're not allowing, like, people to grow and change. And, I hope in light of saying that that he can find some growth and change, and kind of maybe hit a point where he tries to start living and treating people differently. But I don't know. I don't foresee that happening.
I think you gave a very, very good answer. It was a test. I got you, and you passed. Don't worry. No, but there's a very healthy answer too. Like, not holding on to those regrets, like feeling like you don't have to go back and change something, that you're comfortable at least you can own up to how you carried yourself and conducted yourself along the way. I think that's a good sign, because if I would go back and I would have thrown to a different receiver back at that game in '87. We would have went to finals and states. You don't want to be like Uncle Rico, but no, I think you're right with the whole cancel culture thing. It's one of those, like, buzzwords where sometimes when people hear it, their mind just automatically goes to one direction or the other. But it is a real thing. Like, it is out there, and of course, like you said, there are plenty of people who deserve all the fucking wrath that they've gotten, and whatever platforms and opportunities they've lost because they've been really shitty along the way. But you're a perfect example of the collateral damage. Someone caught up in that backlash where, essentially, especially because this is one of those gray area situations. But at the same time, I think we need to, like you said, allow people to grow. Like, what good is all this if we're just going to cancel people and not allow them to better themselves? Well, then what's the motivation for people to change? If they're going to get fucked, if they're going to be fucked no matter what, like, why even change now? Like, we need to allow people that room to learn from their mistakes and their past transgressions. And obviously, if they come back on the scene, then we're taking them with a grain of salt. But this is all worth nothing if we don't allow that growth. So I want to throw that, just make sure we throw that out there. Because this is also one of those topics that's like it's a live wire. It's really hard to talk about, especially being two cisgendered white males. But, like I said, it's tough to talk about. So, but it still needs to be discussed. We don't gain anything by just brushing shit under the rug. Like putting it out there and having honest conversations is, I think, the only way forward. So as long as everybody can be on board with that, I think there can be some positive growth from all this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I just want to live my life and try to push other people to live their lives, just being more considerate. And, like, you don't know what someone else is going through currently or has gone through or whatever the case, and they may say something or do something and act a certain way and it's stemmed from something else. And I respect that from everyone, but I think we just need to start recognizing that we're all human beings, and this like divisive bullshit just needs to end in some fashion, and that's not even just political or anything, just like all across the board. Just, I don't know. I don't understand why it's so hard for people to just like be nice to each other and not be an asshole. It's way more taxing to just be an asshole all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could spend a whole nother podcast talking about this, but if you look back through history, people don't have the best human beings don't have the best track record of being nice and considerate to one another. So, unfortunately, I think part of our nature is like that, which is something that now in civilized society in 2021, we're finally trying to be a little more aware of. But like I said, that's for another conversation. So. Another day we can have that conversation. Yeah. So before we get out of here, Matt, do you have anything you want to plug? Anything you want to shout out for the listeners? Anywhere they could find you?
I don't really have anything to plug. I'm just normal dude trying to live life right now.
I was gonna say, if the answer is no, that's a perfectly acceptable answer, by the way. So
my Instagram is Marcellus Wallace. That's pretty much the only thing I really keep up with.
Does he look
pretty close
like
to deleting a lot of social media? Exactly.
Yeah, not a bad idea these days, deleting social media.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook and everything. If you are currently friends with me or follow me or whatever, or you don't yet and you would like to, hit me up. I'm always down to have a conversation with people. If you're struggling with something or, whatever the case be, sometimes it's nice to just have a stranger's perspective because it's totally outside of, your world. So yeah, I'm down to try to talk and help with anyone that I can. And I hope that anyone listening will try to do the same with their circle of friends and family.
Well, Matt, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you coming on here and telling your story. I mean, I enjoy talking to you. You seem like a real solid dude, man. This is the first time we really got to talk for more than, a couple minutes. So yeah. I really want to say thank you, and I appreciate you being here and being as open and honest with us as you have been.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
I would definitely do it again if maybe if Daniel gets his shit together and actually wants to talk.
Hey, you know what? It's probably better off like this because Danny was just on last week, so I don't want him to get a big head about showing up on the podcast.
Okay, that's a good look.
Next time we'll talk about wrestling.
All right, I love that.
Yeah. And that's it. That was a conversation. So I want to say a huge thank you to Matt for coming on and talking with me for as long as he did. I enjoyed hearing his story and, hearing how he came up and how he dealt with some of the things he dealt with. So again, I want to give a big shout out to him. Big thank you for sharing his story. And you guys, make sure to reach out to him. Go listen to some of his tunes. And that's pretty much all we got. Again, you guys know the deal here. DM me if you want to buy a nice, lovely sticker. I'll probably send you a bonus one. I have some left over from my trial. So they're only like $3. Just send me a DM. I'll mail it to you. It's no big deal. It's easy. And it's if you like the show, if you fuck with me and what I'm doing here, show a little support. Every little bit helps. So make sure you guys follow the show on Instagram, A Pot Amongst Men, also on Twitter. We're on Facebook also. Make sure if you have any questions, maybe you want something answered, or you want to hear about a topic, email me, apotamongstmen@gmail.com. And make sure you like and subscribe the video on YouTube. If you're watching this, please smash that like button, subscribe. Also, smash that as well. Smash a lot of things. Just not literally. Make sure you like us, give us a good rating on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Spotify. We're on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. Wherever you get your podcasts, you will find A Pot Amongst Men. So I got nothing else for you guys. Until next week, I will see you later. Peace.